I very much appreciate excellence in preaching. I would go far, I would walk far to hear an excellent sermon. I take pride and glory in the preaching of those around me. I'm sorry for those of you who may have missed Wednesday's service. It was a beautiful message that we received as Ash Wednesday begins. The only exception I make, the caveat, is in one's predecessor. One does not choose to hear excellence in that person's preaching. Before I was called I knew I was coming here. Before I appeared, I, as you know, have a sister and brother-in-law living in Kennebunk. And so I set my spies unto the task of coming to worship at the church on the Cape and listening to Pastor Bill Gardei preach. I knew after Easter I would get their surmisal, and I knew I was fortunate because my sister Debbie is a very harsh critic. So I waited with some suspense, and she came back. It was Easter. I said, "So, how was he?" And she said, "Excellent." And I went, "Oh. This is not good. This is not good." But then I thought, well, there's hope because it was Easter. I mean, maybe next Sunday I'll luck out. Well, next Sunday came. I did not. And I soon came to realize it was a fact of life that Bill Gardei is an outstanding preacher. And so this morning he will bring to us his wisdom, God's word, as we hear the sermon, Created to Be.
Am I to do something?
Just listen to yourself.
Oh, I was going to introduce.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Is that all right?
Yes.
Am I plugged in?
I see a red light.
Okay, I am. I understand that in the liturgical tradition, which we have a part of in here, when the minister speaks, there's an automatic response, blah, 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 on the part of the minister, and also to you on the part of the congregation. And this clergyman stepped up. He was a guest, tapped the microphone and didn't hear anything. And he tapped it again, and he didn't hear anything, and then he whispered, "I think something's wrong with this microphone." And the congregation said, "And also with you." Now, that may occur again in the sermon, but we'll see. I have been... was at the doctor's for my eyes, and things weren't going so good. And he is such a beautiful person, and he said, "Bill, sometimes Mother Nature plays tricks on us. She has a fickle nature, side to her nature. And that's kind of what we just be patient, and we'll work with it." Well, over the past better than 10 years, I have become acquainted with the fickle side of Mother Nature in several instances. And very often, the physical nature, being as it is in truth, is tied directly into our emotional and spiritual sides of life. And what I have tried to do is to understand what it's all about. When the down times have come and there seems to be a descent into darkness, am I alone? Which tends to come to many of us, the sense of. Anyhow, over the last 10 some years, I have joined the ranks of many of you who are well acquainted with what I'm about to say. But what I want you to understand is that there's more. And we can find that more through the goodness of each other, of each of us to the other. It comes, it is a way that we can be with that which is troublesome without being totally afraid. I therefore hope that the words that I speak will bring something to your spirit journey that will be helpful. Thank you for being here. You are a remarkably grand group of characters. Okay.
I really like this desacralized version of the Bible, this paraphrase, and I've used it often here. And some of you who are new to me may be glad that you don't have me all that time. But this is an account, a rich account, from the book of Acts, and it tells about Paul going to the big city of Athens. And he was waiting for two of his buddies, and they were being delayed, and he had to stay in this city. And it says that all Paul could think about was that this city was a junkyard of idols. And he was getting more and more furious with the fact that he had to rub shoulders with people who were so disagreeable. Not him, of course, but the people. And he started telling everybody what a thing this was to have all these idols. And so he said, let me tell you about something else. And some of them listened to this street preacher and said, what an airhead. That's a new slant on God as he talks. Tell us more about it. Anyhow, and it goes on. And so, as you may remember, the Athenian way, or the Areopagus, as it's called, was lined with pillars. And on top of every pillar was a god, an image. Took Paul's breath away. He said he took up his space in this lineup and laid it out for them. He said, and this is really very diplomatic, it's plain to see that you Athenians take your religion seriously. When I arrived here the other day, I was fascinated with all the shrines I came across, and then I found one at the end of the line that says, to a God nobody knows. I'm here to introduce you to that God, says Paul. And the God who made the world and everything in it, this master of sky and land, doesn't live in custom-made shrines or need human race to run errands for him, as if he couldn't take care of himself. He makes the creatures. The creatures don't make him. Starting from scratch, he made the entire human race and made the earth hospitable, with plenty of time and space for living, so we could seek after God and not just grope around in the dark, but actually find him. He doesn't play hide and seek with us. He's not remote. He's near. In him we live and move and have our being. We can't get away from him. One of your poets said it well. We are the God created. No hammer and chisel and stone is necessary for us to know that. There are two major reasons that I want to say but one thing this morning. And the first major reason is that it is the season of Lent. And traditionally that's been in our Christian culture. It has been a time when we give long thoughts to our days and to the journey we call life. That's one of the primary reasons that I want to say what I want to say. And the other is that I have joined the ranks of many of you. But once it becomes ours, it seems somehow more overwhelming. If it belongs to someone else, the problem, then it's not felt in ourselves so much. But I have been battling an eye disease, as you know, And since I have seen some of you, I have lost my sight in my right eye. This right side has never been so beautiful looking, I can't see you. But it has altered some of my deep emotions, and I have gained strength from some I know who also experience this. I know I'm not alone, but sometimes one feels that way. I've always depended on my physical strength and something of the brain that I have to outwit whatever came my way. And I've always been able to do it, and all of a sudden I can't shake my head and make it all go away, nor can I take a pill and have it all go away. My routine has been trounced, and other thoughts have come into my head. So I've thought a lot about this, and this is not meant to be what I hope to be able to do with this moment of time that I have with you, is to encourage you in your own time of stumble need, not to be afraid. Don't dwell in the land of fear. There is more to be learned through our darknesses than we realize until we're there. So let me try this out on you, but encourage you in all that you ever do from here on out to remember that indeed it is true that in this mystery we call God, in this mystery, we actually do live and move and have our being. In every life, there are moments when something, somewhere, somehow goes crazy. We work hard, we watch our children with great love, we seek to be a good mate, we do everything we know that was guaranteed to us if we worked hard, all would benefit. And yet, something falls apart. It sneaks around the corner of us, and we lose something precious within ourselves, or a mate, or a child, or a neighbor, a loved one of any sort. We become ill, and someone dies. No matter how good we are, that impinges upon the atmosphere of our awareness. For many, many people, the newspaper and the TV are not helpful in seeking out some comfort. Days upon end pass without a sign that there is any more to life than passing through trouble and turmoil. CNN doesn't improve on that at all. And whatever source that we read or see is so filled with the loss of life and troubles. In this season of Lent, Christians listen once again to the story of Jesus and his hours of darkness, facing the violence of a world gone mad. In this ancient and yet ever new story that offers richness to our thoughts and hopes to our heart, we need to hear it. We need to visit it. We need not to be afraid. None of us like to stare into a dark cellar or walk down the steps into that which has no light. None of us. But in so doing, we are granted, by the majesty of creation itself, we are granted another aspect of ourselves that would not have been met or found in any other way. In our deep questioning, why so much misery, thoughtful people have attempted to give a direction, not an answer, but a direction. And I chose, just for the simplicity and beauty of the direction, these words from the author C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis attempts to answer why the negative, and then he pushes us into an awareness of what the negative brings, but also something else. Listen. God created things which had free will. That means creatures which can go either wrong or right. If a thing is free to be good, it is also free to be bad. And free will is what made evil possible. Because free will, though it makes evil possible, is also the only thing that makes possible any love or goodness or joy worth living. A world of creatures that work like machines would hardly be worth creating. The happiness which God designs for his creatures is the happiness of being free, voluntarily united to him and to each other. For you see, the moment you have a self at all, there is the possibility of putting yourself first, wanting to be the center, wanting to be God, in fact. The story out of the book of Genesis tells us that Satan put it into the heads of our ancestors the idea that they could be like gods, could set up on their own as if they had created themselves, be their own masters, invent some sort of happiness for themselves outside God, apart from God. And out of that hopeless attempt has come nearly all that we call human history. Money, poverty, ambition, war, prostitution, classes, empires, slavery. The long, terrible story of man trying to find something other than God which will make him happy. Where, then, when we are rudely touched by life's changes and diminishments, and are left questing for a way to reconcile our fragmentations and to heal our wounds, where do we go? Where do you go? When anxiousness grips you like a shroud, when the nighttime seems impossibly long, waiting for the dawn of a simple light, what do you do? Paul, it's just such fun. He was such a cantankerous cuss. He called it like it was. And he looked down that row with all these pillars and with the gods on top of the pillars. And the first pillar he came to had a brand new Humvee sitting right on top. And the next one was a house that was had 4 garages. And the next one, there was this humongous MasterCard sitting on top of this pillar. And on the other side, there was a box of pills to take away wrinkles. And on down, there was one that cured knee pain. And there was one pill even that created hair where there had been little before. And on it went. And Paul was just beside himself with these gods that had taken over. And he said, I want to talk to you about the empty pillar. I want to talk to you about the one that says a God nobody knows. The sense that there is something more is because there is more than the externals of life, much more than the accomplishments of human endeavor. Jesus taught that this God nobody knows is the life force in which we live and move and have our being. Think of that. Think of that. We exist within the love that made us. This force or mystery is wise and loving capable of seeing us and knowing us deeply. And in the midst of life's storms, our surrender to this something more enables us to be the unique gift that we are. The pummeling comes, the heat rises, the stumblings grow more frequent, and we reach out, and that which we once believed or trusted is no longer there as a dependent or as a help even. In that moment, there is something more discoverable in the deep part of yourself. Jesus faced death, not without the anguish that accompanies such an experience, yet his way through, and it is our guide as well, his way through was in a yielding when he said with all the courage he could say, when everything else had vanished for him, when nothing more sustained him, Jesus in his anguish said, "Thy will be done." I want to take a detour here, but think of it. In the 23rd Psalm, which we all know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. What does that mean? Surely Jesus wanted not to face death, not wanting to die, not wanting to be tortured, not wanting to be... We shall not want. What I have come to believe that it means is that it isn't that we won't want, it's that when we ultimately need will be supplied. In that moment of darkest, treacherous, most slippery slope that we get into sometimes, when all of that which is a crisis gets to us, if we could only, however faintly, remember there is something more. The storms of life provide us a chance to recognize that we can say yes. We can say yes to the one in whom we live and move and have our being, and not have an iota of an idea what it'll do or where it will take us, but say yes. It's sort of like sitting down in a chair and trusting it implicitly that it won't collapse when you do. We say in the middle of the turmoil, yes. Now, the wonder of our creation is we need not be lost in our negative choices or circumstances not chosen. We need not be lost. But it does cost. The author Morris West, I believe he wrote one of the things was The Shoes of the Fisherman. You may know that novel from a time ago. But he said, it costs so much to be a full human being that there are few who, or there are not many, who have the enlightenment or the courage to pay the price. Well, I don't know if I agree with that or not. I think there are a lot that do. But one has to abandon altogether the search for security and reach out to the risk of living, reach out with both arms toward life. Toward life. One has to embrace the world like a lover and yet demand no easy return of love. One has to accept pain as a condition of existence. One has to court doubt and darkness as the cost of knowing. One needs a will stubborn in conflict, but open always to the total acceptance of every consequence of living and dying. I think it's easier to say, if you can muster up the courage to say, I know there's more. I know this is not all there is to my life, to our life. We are created to be free, free to choose the embrace and embrace the negative in order to transform it. You see, such an act is an act of trusting that in God we live and move and have our being. It's hard to remember that when you go to bed seeing and get up not seeing. It's hard to believe that there is a rhythm or a reason. And of course, we plumb the depths of the question, why? I told you this story maybe, but maybe you forgot it, so I'll tell it again. St. Teresa was crossing a stream in a horse-drawn cart with great big wooden wheels, and the cart went over a stone, and it tipped the cart, and out she fell and went plop into the water. And she's sitting there all soaking wet, and she said, "Why me, God?" And a voice said, "That's the way I treat my friends." And she said, "That's why you have so few." The ragged edges of an abiding belief that there is something more to this life of ours comes into play in the midst of our times of crisis. It wells up as a longing, a deep wishing, a dreaming of something better than what we are experiencing. And again, this delightful old story tells so much about where our search needs to go. This poor rabbi lived in the city of Krakow on the street of Lost Angel in the last hovel with his wife and 4 children. Since he was poor, he dreamed every night of riches. And one night he had a very vivid dream that underneath a bridge in Warsaw was a treasure. He told his wife and children next morning that he was going to Warsaw. He packed food and clothing and set off to find the bridge. He traveled and finally did arrive very weary in Warsaw and saw the bridge just as he had dreamed, except that there was a guard on the bridge pacing back and forth. Well, he was tired, and he thought maybe he would just take a nap and maybe the guard would go away. He fell asleep, and when he awakened from his sleep, he rattled the bushes, and all of a sudden the guard was there. "You there! Come here!" He came forward. "What are you doing here?" And the simple man who wouldn't run wouldn't lie. And he said, "Well, I dreamed that underneath this bridge there's a treasure, and I have traveled many miles to find it and be rich." The guard said, "This is strange. Just last night I too had a dream. I dreamed that in the city of Krakow, on the street of Lost Angel, in the last hovel on that street, there lives a rabbi, a wife, and 4 children. And there is buried behind the fireplace a treasure. But it's just a dream. It can never be true. Now you get out of here before I run you in. Never let me see you again." The treasure of that something more is locked on your own hearth. It's also called your heart. It's a place where your renewal begins in the midst of every evidence that all has been lost. Isn't that worth working with? Within each of us is the treasure for which we long. This story is told by the author Robert Fulghum, and it's about a seminar that he attended on Greek culture, and the seminar leader, Dr. Alexander Papaderos, asked at the last session, "Are there any questions?" And Robert Fulghum said, "Dr. Papaderos, what for you is the meaning of life?" He said the usual laughter followed and people stirred to go, but Papaderos held up his hand and stilled the room and looked at me for a long time, asking with his eyes if I was serious, and seeing my eyes knew I was. "I will answer your question." And taking his wallet out of his hip pocket, he fished into a leather billfold and brought out a very small, round mirror about the size of a quarter. And what he said was something like this: "When I was a small child during the war, we were very poor and we lived in a remote village. And one day on the road, I found the broken pieces of a mirror. A German motorcycle had been wrecked in that place. I tried to find all the pieces and put them together, but it was not possible, so I kept only the largest piece, this one. And by scratching it on a stone, I made it round. I began to play with it as a toy and became fascinated by the fact that I could reflect light into dark places and where the sun would never shine, in deep holes and crevices and dark closets. It became a game for me to get light into the most inaccessible places I could find. I kept the little mirror, and as I went about my growing up, I would take it out in idle moments and continue the challenge of the game. As I became a man, I grew to understand that this was not just a child's game, but a metaphor for what I might do with my life. I came to understand that I am not the light or the source of light, but light, meaning truth, understanding, knowledge, is there, and it will only shine in many dark places if I reflect it. I am a fragment of a mirror whose whole design and shape I do not know. Nevertheless, with what I have, I can reflect light into the dark places of this world, into the black places in the hearts of men, and change some things in some people. Perhaps others may see and do likewise. That is what I am about. That is the meaning of my life. I know not where you are, nor how you are in this moment of time. But I do know that beneath the surface of whatever besets you, there is a light. And if you will say yes to it, you can lift people like me into the light as well. Isn't that worthwhile? And Jesus said, in the face of his own destruction, thy will be done.